feel like I really understand that we have a responsibility to change the narrative around what we are delivering to young people in the classroom. But I would describe the actual day-to-day learning side of things very challenging.
Most people think they already know the man who married Princess Beatrice. To the public, he appears to be a successful businessman who quietly stepped into royal life with little drama. But behind the polished headlines lies a far more fascinating story, one filled with unexpected connections, painful personal challenges, controversial rumors, and responsibilities few outsiders truly understand. How did a property executive with ties to billionaires and world leaders become one of the most scrutinized men connected to the British royal family? And why does his life continue to spark so much curiosity years after the royal wedding? The deeper you look, the more surprising the picture becomes. Before the royal wedding, before the headlines, and before millions of people around the world learned how to pronounce his name, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi was already living a life that looked remarkably different from the average London businessman. While many first came to know him simply as Princess Beatrice's husband, his story actually begins decades earlier, one shaped by aristocratic heritage, entrepreneurial ambition, and a family history that stretched far beyond Britain's borders. Born on November 19, 1983, Edoardo Alessandro Mapelli Mozzi entered a world where privilege and responsibility often went hand in hand. His father, Count Alessandro Mapelli Mozzi, belonged to an old Italian noble family whose roots can be traced back centuries. Although aristocratic titles carry little legal significance in modern Italy, the family's history remained an important part of their identity. His mother, Nicola Burrows, came from a very different background, bringing together two cultures that helped shape Edoardo's outlook from an early age. Despite his noble lineage, those who knew him during his younger years often described him as driven rather than entitled. Friends would later recall someone who was ambitious, energetic, and fascinated by architecture and design. Rather than relying on his family's historic name, he seemed determined to build a career based on his own accomplishments. That ambition eventually led him into the competitive world of luxury property development. London's real estate market is one of the toughest in the world, attracting wealthy investors, international buyers, and fierce competition. Succeeding there requires far more than an impressive resume. It demands relationships, negotiation skills, and the ability to recognize opportunities others miss. Edoardo appeared to possess exactly those qualities. He founded Bonda Property, a company specializing in designing, developing, and renovating high-end homes for affluent clients. Instead of simply buying and selling expensive houses, Bonda focused on creating customized luxury residences that blended elegant architecture with modern living. The business gradually earned a reputation among elite clients who valued discretion as much as craftsmanship. Years before becoming associated with the royal family, Edoardo had already built connections within London's business and social circles. His clients included successful entrepreneurs, international investors, and wealthy individuals seeking exclusive properties. His work often kept him behind closed doors, away from cameras, where confidentiality was considered one of the industry's greatest assets. Ironically, the man who made a career protecting other people's privacy would later find his own life under constant public scrutiny. But there was another side to Edoardo that received far less attention than his business achievements. Long before meeting Princess Beatrice, he had entered a serious relationship with architect Dara Huang. Together they welcomed a son, Christopher Wolfe, affectionately known as Wolfie. Becoming a father marked a significant turning point in Edoardo's life. Friends and associates frequently described him as deeply devoted to his son, making every effort to remain an active and loving parent despite the eventual end of his relationship with Huang. Their separation was handled privately, with both parents continuing to co-parent Wolfie. At the time, it attracted relatively little public interest. After all, Edoardo was still largely unknown outside elite London circles. That anonymity wouldn't last much longer. Another intriguing aspect of his life was his long-standing connection to the British royal family. Contrary to popular belief, Princess Beatrice and Edoardo weren't complete strangers who happened to meet by chance. Their families had moved in overlapping social circles for years. They attended similar events, shared mutual acquaintances, and were familiar with many of the same people long before romance entered the picture. Looking back, some royal commentators have even suggested that their eventual relationship seemed less like a fairy tale coincidence, and more like two lives gradually moving toward the same destination. Still, no one could have predicted just how dramatically everything was about to change. Within a remarkably short period, Eduardo would go from respected businessman to international headline. Every business decision, family relationship, and even photographs from years earlier would suddenly become subjects of public discussion. His private history would be examined in extraordinary detail by newspapers, television programs, and millions of people online. The quiet life he had carefully built was about to disappear forever. And when an old friendship unexpectedly transformed into something much deeper, neither Eduardo nor Princess Beatrice could have imagined just how closely the entire world would begin watching their every move. If Chapter 1 explained who Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi was before the spotlight, Chapter 2 is where everything changed. For years, Princess Beatrice had lived under an intense level of public scrutiny. As the eldest daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, she had spent her entire life being photographed, analyzed, and compared to other members of the royal family. Every relationship she entered became front-page news, and every public appearance invited commentary from both the press and the public. After the end of her long-term relationship with businessman Dave Clark in 2016, Beatrice largely stepped back from discussing her private life. While tabloids continued speculating about her future, she appeared focused on her career and charitable work rather than rushing into another high-profile romance. Then came Eduardo. Unlike many royal relationships that begin with dramatic public introductions, theirs developed quietly. The two already moved in similar social circles, and their families had known each other for years. That familiarity gave their relationship a foundation that was noticeably different from the whirlwind romances often associated with royalty. By late 2018, rumors of a romance began circulating after the pair were spotted together at several events. At first, neither of them commented publicly. Friends later suggested they deliberately chose to keep the relationship private while they determined whether it had a future beyond the headlines. That decision would prove wise, because once their relationship became public, attention exploded. Every photograph of the couple was examined in detail. Newspapers analyzed their body language, fashion choices, and travel plans. Royal commentators debated whether Eduardo would fit into one of the world's most closely watched families. Unlike previous royal partners who came from completely different worlds, Eduardo already understood elite society. His career brought him into contact with wealthy clients, influential business leaders, and prominent public figures. He wasn't intimidated by formal occasions or high-profile gatherings, qualities that many observers believed helped him adapt quickly to royal life. Still, adapting to royal life and living under royal scrutiny are two very different things. In September 2019, the couple announced their engagement. The official photographs showed a smiling Princess Beatrice wearing a diamond ring designed with Eduardo's personal involvement. The images projected warmth and optimism, and many royal supporters welcomed what seemed to be a happy new chapter for Beatrice after several difficult years. The announcement was met with congratulations from across the world. Yet beneath the celebrations, another reality was beginning to unfold. Only months later, the COVID-19 pandemic brought much of the world to a standstill. Like countless other couples, Beatrice and Eduardo suddenly found their wedding plans thrown into uncertainty. The grand royal celebration many expected became impossible under strict public health restrictions. Dates changed, guest lists were reduced, and the future remained unclear for weeks. Instead of postponing indefinitely, the couple made a different choice. On July 17, 2020, they married in a small, private ceremony at the Royal Chapel of All Saints in Windsor Great Park. The intimate service included only a handful of close family members and friends, reflecting both government restrictions and the couple's preference for keeping the occasion deeply personal. One detail captured worldwide attention. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip attended the ceremony, making one of their rare public appearances during the pandemic. Their presence gave the wedding added emotional significance, particularly in hindsight, as it became one of the last family celebrations both would attend together. The wedding photographs also carried a subtle historical touch. Princess Beatrice wore a vintage Norman Hartnell gown that had originally belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, along with the Queen Mary fringe tiara, the same tiara worn by the late Queen on her own wedding day in 1947. The choice symbolized continuity, tradition, and a close bond between grandmother and granddaughter. For many viewers, the modest ceremony stood in sharp contrast to the lavish royal weddings of previous years. Rather than elaborate pageantry, the focus remained on family, resilience, and commitment during an extraordinarily uncertain time. Not long afterward, the couple welcomed their daughter, Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mozzi, expanding their family alongside Eduardo's son, Wolfie. Beatrice embraced her role as both mother and stepmother, and the family projected an image of stability that many admired. But while their private life appeared to be settling into a happy rhythm, the public conversation was taking a different turn. As curiosity about Eduardo grew, so did interest in his past. Old relationships, family dynamics, and tabloid speculation resurfaced with renewed intensity. What had once been private history was suddenly headline material, and not every story would be reported with the same level of accuracy or fairness. The honeymoon period was ending, and the couple was about to discover that becoming part of the royal family meant living under a microscope unlike any they had ever experienced. For many people who marry into the British royal family, life changes overnight. Privacy becomes a luxury, ordinary moments become front-page news, and even the smallest personal decisions can trigger endless debate. For Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi, that reality arrived faster than almost anyone expected. Before his relationship with Princess Beatrice became public, very few people outside London's property industry knew who he was. His business thrived on discretion, and his personal life attracted little attention. But once he became connected to the monarchy, journalists and social media users began digging through years of his past, determined to uncover every detail they could. One subject quickly dominated the conversation: his previous relationship with American architect Dara Huang. The two had shared several years together and welcomed their son, Christopher Wolfe, known affectionately as Wolfie. By the time Eduardo and Princess Beatrice began dating, the relationship had already ended. Even so, tabloids repeatedly revisited the story, often framing it as a source of ongoing drama. In reality, the situation was far more ordinary than many headlines suggested. Eduardo and Dara continued to co-parent their son, and both have spoken publicly at different times about the importance of putting Wolfie's well-being first. Royal observers frequently noted that Princess Beatrice also appeared to embrace her role in his life, with reports indicating that the blended family worked to create a stable and supportive environment. That, however, didn't stop sensational stories. Every family gathering, every photograph, and every public appearance became an opportunity for speculation. If Dara was photographed attending an event with Wolfie, some outlets hinted at conflict. If Beatrice appeared with Wolfie, others tried to invent stories about family tensions. Most of those narratives relied far more on speculation than on verifiable facts. It became a familiar pattern in modern celebrity culture. A routine co-parenting arrangement, something experienced by countless families around the world, was transformed into an endless cycle of dramatic headlines simply because royalty was involved. Social media only amplified the situation. Short video clips, anonymous online posts, and out-of-context photographs spread rapidly across platforms. Within hours, assumptions could become viral talking points, even when no reliable evidence supported them. Royal commentators often pointed out how difficult it had become for public figures to correct misinformation. Once a rumor gained momentum online, factual reporting rarely traveled as far or as fast. Eduardo rarely responded publicly. Unlike some celebrities who regularly address speculation through interviews or social media, he generally chose silence. To supporters, that reflected maturity and a desire to protect his family's privacy. To critics, it sometimes created a vacuum that allowed rumors to flourish. Princess Beatrice adopted a similarly reserved approach. The couple consistently avoided public arguments or headline-grabbing rebuttals, instead appearing together at official events with calm professionalism. Over time, that quiet strategy became part of their public identity. Still, outside pressures continued to mount. The royal family itself was entering one of the most turbulent periods in modern history. Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, had stepped back from royal duties. Prince Andrew faced intense public scrutiny over legal and reputational controversies. Questions about the future of the monarchy dominated newspapers almost daily. Although Edoardo wasn't directly connected to many of those issues, he found himself living inside an institution where every controversy affected everyone associated with it. Suddenly, he wasn't just being judged as a businessman or a husband. He was being viewed as a member of one of the world's most scrutinized families. That meant everything, from where he stood during public ceremonies to the expression on his face during royal appearances, could become the subject of articles, online debates, and endless commentary. Despite that pressure, observers often noticed one consistent pattern. Whenever Princess Beatrice attended official events, Edoardo appeared comfortable taking a supporting role. He rarely sought attention, avoided unnecessary public statements, and seemed content allowing his wife to remain the focus. Some royal experts argued that this understated approach helped strengthen Beatrice's public image. Rather than competing for headlines, he projected stability at a time when stability was in short supply. Yet even as the couple quietly built their family life, another challenge was beginning to emerge. The public knew Edoardo as Princess Beatrice's husband, but far fewer people understood the scale of his professional career. Balancing a thriving luxury property business with the expectations of royal life would prove far more complicated than many realized. Could he continue building his own identity while carrying the weight of one of the world's most famous surnames? That question would soon become one of the defining challenges of his life, and the answer revealed far more about his character than any tabloid headline ever could. Marrying into the British royal family has never been simple. But the timing of Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi's entrance into the monarchy made his situation especially unusual. By the time he married Princess Beatrice in July 2020, the institution was facing one of the most turbulent periods in its modern history. Public confidence was being tested, media scrutiny had reached unprecedented levels, and nearly every royal appearance seemed to generate intense debate. For someone who had spent much of his professional life avoiding publicity, it was a dramatic adjustment. Unlike those born into the royal family, Edoardo hadn't spent decades learning how to navigate palace protocols or relentless media attention. He had to adapt quickly while remaining true to the private life he had carefully built before meeting Beatrice. One of the biggest challenges was finding the right balance. Technically, Edoardo did not become a working royal after the marriage. He wasn't expected to carry out official duties full-time, nor did he receive a royal title through his marriage. Instead, he continued leading his property business while supporting Princess Beatrice at selected public engagements and family events. That unique position gave him more independence than many people realized. He could continue developing Banda property without the restrictions that often accompany official royal roles. At the same time, he had to understand that every public appearance, even as a non-working royal, would be analyzed by millions. It was a balancing act few people would envy. The pressure intensified because of events unfolding around the family. Prince Andrew, Beatrice's father, remained at the center of an ongoing reputational crisis. The allegations and legal developments surrounding him dominated international headlines for years, casting a long shadow over the wider royal family. Although Princess Beatrice was not involved in those matters, she inevitably found herself answering questions through her public appearances rather than interviews. For Edoardo, this created an uncomfortable reality. He was supporting his wife during an emotionally difficult period while also trying to shield their growing family from the constant cycle of speculation. It was a role that required patience, discretion, and an understanding that not every accusation or rumor deserved a public response. Observers often noted that he appeared to embrace that philosophy. Whether attending memorial services, royal weddings, holiday gatherings, or ceremonial occasions, Edoardo consistently projected calm. He smiled when appropriate, stepped back when protocol required it, and rarely attempted to draw attention to himself. Royal commentators frequently contrasted his approach with the louder personalities that often dominate modern celebrity culture. In an era where many public figures share every opinion online, Eduardo's silence became one of his defining characteristics. That didn't mean he was invisible. Careful royal watchers noticed small moments that hinted at the strength of his relationship with Princess Beatrice. A reassuring glance during formal events, a helping hand while navigating crowds, or a quiet conversation before cameras began rolling. These understated gestures painted a picture of a couple who appeared genuinely comfortable together. Those moments rarely generated sensational headlines, but they contributed to a growing perception that Beatrice had found a supportive partner. The arrival of their daughter, Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mozzi, in September 2021 further shifted public attention toward their family life. Together with Wolfie, the couple focused on creating a stable home while maintaining as much privacy as possible. Unlike some celebrity parents, they chose not to make their children central figures in public life. Official photographs were limited, personal details were carefully guarded, and family moments were largely kept away from social media. It was a deliberate choice, one that reflected lessons the royal family had learned over generations about the costs of constant public exposure. Even so, maintaining privacy was becoming increasingly difficult. As Eduardo's profile grew, interest extended beyond his family life. Questions emerged about his business dealings, his professional ambitions, and whether he could continue thriving in the luxury property market while carrying the attention that came with royal connections. Was he still simply a successful entrepreneur? Or had becoming Princess Beatrice's husband permanently changed how the world, and perhaps even his clients, viewed him? The answer lay not inside Buckingham Palace, but in the competitive world of luxury real estate, where reputation can be just as valuable as property itself. While much of the world knows Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi because of his marriage to Princess Beatrice, there is another side of his identity that existed long before royal headlines followed his every move. He was and remains a businessman. 4 years before entering the royal family, Eduardo built his reputation in one of the most competitive industries in the world: luxury property development. Unlike many public figures whose fame came first and business opportunities came later, his professional career was already established before his royal connection became a global talking point. His company, Bonda Property, became the foundation of that success. Founded in London, Bonda focused on creating high-end residential properties designed around the lifestyles of wealthy clients. Instead of simply developing houses for the market, the company emphasized personalized design, architecture, and carefully planned living spaces. The philosophy was simple. Luxury was not only about size or price. It was about creating homes that reflected the personality and needs of the people who lived in them. That approach helped Eduardo establish relationships within London's elite property circles. His clients included successful entrepreneurs, investors, and individuals who valued both exceptional design and complete discretion. And discretion was something Eduardo understood better than most. Before royal attention entered his life, much of his professional world operated quietly. Luxury property deals often involve private negotiations, significant financial decisions, and clients who prefer staying away from public attention. Ironically, the same quality that made him successful in business became the quality that defined his approach to royal life. He wasn't interested in becoming a celebrity. He wasn't building a personal brand around fame. Instead, he appeared focused on his work, his family, and maintaining a level of privacy that became increasingly rare in the modern world. However, marrying into the royal family inevitably changed how people viewed his professional achievements. Some questioned whether his royal connection gave him additional advantages in business. Others argued that his success existed independently and that he had already established himself years before Princess Beatrice entered the picture. The reality was more complicated. Royal associations can create opportunities, but they also create intense scrutiny. Every professional decision becomes easier to examine, every partnership receives more attention, and every success invites questions about whether it was earned or influenced by connections. For Eduardo, that meant his business life had to withstand the same level of examination as his personal life. Unlike working members of the royal family, he did not have to abandon his career after marriage. This allowed him to maintain a separate identity outside royal duties. In many ways, that independence may have helped him avoid some of the challenges faced by other people who marry into famous families. He was not simply defined by his relationship. He had his own achievements, his own responsibilities, and his own professional reputation to protect. That distinction became increasingly important as Princess Beatrice's role within the wider royal family evolved. As the monarchy entered a period of transition, younger royals began taking on more attention. With Prince Harry and Meghan stepping away from official duties and other senior royals reducing responsibilities, the public became more interested in the extended royal family. That naturally placed more focus on figures like Beatrice and Edoardo. Yet even with growing curiosity, the couple continued following the same pattern. Maintain privacy, avoid unnecessary controversy, and focus on family. For Edoardo, the challenge was finding a way to exist in two very different worlds. One world valued confidentiality, business negotiations, and professional independence. The other involved centuries of tradition, public appearances, and constant attention. Few people have to navigate both. And perhaps the most interesting part of Edoardo's story is that he never seemed determined to become a royal personality. Instead, he appeared to be someone who happened to marry into royalty while continuing to live according to his own values. That approach earned him admiration from some observers, but others remained skeptical. Because behind the quiet appearances and carefully managed public image was still a question many people wanted answered. Who was the real Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi when the cameras were gone? The answer would come not from official ceremonies or newspaper headlines, but from the people closest to him and the way he handled the most important role of all, being a husband and father. In the world of royalty, perception often becomes reality. A single photograph can create a story. A short statement can become a headline, and a person who was once completely unknown to the public can suddenly find their entire life analyzed by millions of strangers. That is exactly what happened to Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. Before Princess Beatrice, he was known primarily in business circles. His reputation was built around property development, design, and private client relationships. But after becoming connected to the royal family, his identity changed in the eyes of the public. Suddenly, he wasn't just Edoardo. He was Princess Beatrice's husband. That label carried enormous attention, but it also created a challenge. How does someone maintain their own identity when the world sees them through the lens of someone else's fame? Edoardo's answer appeared to be simple. Stay private, stay consistent, and let actions speak louder than headlines. Unlike many people connected to celebrities or royalty, he rarely gave interviews about his personal life. He didn't use social media to explain his decisions or respond to criticism. He didn't attempt to control every narrative written about him. Instead, he seemed comfortable allowing speculation to exist without constant reaction. For supporters, this approach showed confidence and maturity. They argued that his willingness to avoid public drama demonstrated a strong understanding of what mattered most: his marriage, his children, and his responsibilities. Critics, however, viewed the lack of public explanation differently. Because Edoardo remained quiet, unanswered questions often remained unanswered. In the modern media environment, silence can sometimes create more curiosity rather than less. This became especially clear whenever discussions about his past resurfaced. His previous relationship with Dara Huang and his role as father to Wolfie continued to attract interest from royal watchers. But over time, the conversation gradually shifted. Instead of focusing only on the circumstances surrounding his past, more attention was placed on how he handled fatherhood and family life. One aspect that stood out was his relationship with Princess Beatrice's daughter, Sienna, and his continued involvement in Wolfie's upbringing. Modern royal families are not always defined by traditional structures anymore. Blended families, step-parent relationships, and shared parenting responsibilities have become part of everyday life for many people, including those connected to the monarchy. Edoardo and Beatrice represented that changing reality. They presented an image of a family built around cooperation rather than perfection. There were no dramatic public battles or carefully staged attempts to convince the world that everything was flawless. Instead, they maintained a relatively normal approach to family life despite living under extraordinary circumstances. That balance may have been one of their greatest strengths. Another reason Eduardo attracted attention was because he represented a different type of royal partner. Historically, spouses entering royal families often became major public figures themselves. Their personalities, fashion choices, and opinions became central parts of the royal story. Eduardo followed a different path. He appeared comfortable supporting from the background. At public events, he often allowed Princess Beatrice to take the spotlight. He accompanied her, supported her, and participated when necessary, but rarely appeared interested in becoming the main attraction. Some royal observers compared this approach to the traditional role of a supportive partner, someone whose influence is felt more privately than publicly, and that may explain why opinions about him remained so divided. To some, he represented stability and discretion in an era where public figures often seek attention. To others, his quiet nature created mystery. But perhaps the most important measure of his life was not what strangers thought of him online. It was how Princess Beatrice appeared whenever they were together. Over the years, their public appearances revealed a couple who seemed comfortable in each other's presence. There was an ease between them that suggested familiarity rather than performance. Of course, the public can only see a small portion of any relationship. Behind palace gates and away from cameras, their marriage existed in ordinary moments that would never become headlines. Raising children, managing careers, supporting each other through difficult periods, and building a life beyond public expectations. And that may be the greatest contradiction of Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi's story. The world became fascinated with him because he married into royalty. But the qualities that appear to define him, the privacy, the patience, and the refusal to chase attention, are exactly what make him one of the least understood figures connected to the royal family. Yet as the monarchy continues changing, one final question remains. Will Eduardo remain a quiet supporter standing behind Princess Beatrice? Or will the future place him in a much more visible role than anyone expected? For much of his life, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi operated away from the spotlight. He built businesses quietly. He maintained his privacy. He created a reputation based on professional success rather than public recognition. Then one relationship changed everything. By marrying Princess Beatrice, Eduardo became connected to one of the most famous families in the world. But unlike many people who enter royal circles and immediately embrace public attention, he chose a different path. He remained largely behind the scenes, and that decision may ultimately define his place in the royal story. The British monarchy has always evolved with the times. Every generation faces new challenges, and every new royal figure must determine how they fit into an institution that balances centuries of tradition with a constantly changing world. For Eduardo and Beatrice, the future will likely involve navigating that balance carefully. They are part of a younger generation of royals who represent a different approach to public life. Unlike previous generations who were expected to follow strict patterns, modern royal family members often have to balance personal careers, private families, and public responsibilities. Eduardo's position is particularly unique. He is close enough to the royal family to attract worldwide interest, but separate enough to maintain his own professional identity. He does not carry out full-time royal duties, yet his connection to Princess Beatrice ensures that public curiosity will always follow him. That creates both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, his independence allows him to continue developing his career and maintaining a life outside traditional royal expectations. On the other hand, every decision he makes can be viewed through the lens of his relationship with the monarchy. A business move, a public appearance, or even a family photograph can attract attention simply because of his connection to the royal family. Yet throughout his journey, one pattern has remained consistent. Eduardo has rarely chased the spotlight. Instead, he appears focused on the things closest to him: his marriage, his children, and his work. That may be why his relationship with Princess Beatrice has attracted so much interest. In an environment where public drama often dominates headlines, their approach has been noticeably different. They have not built their image around constant appearances or public statements. They have built it around consistency. The arrival of their daughter, Sienna, and Eduardo's continued role in Wolfie's life suggests that family has become one of the central parts of his identity. While the public may know him through royal connections, those closest to him likely know him through much more ordinary roles: a husband, a father, and a person trying to create stability for his family. That contrast is perhaps the most interesting part of his story. The world sees a man connected to castles, ceremonies, and royal traditions. But privately, his life is likely shaped by the same things that shape millions of other families: responsibility, relationships, challenges, and the desire to protect the people he loves. Still, questions about his long-term place within the royal family remain. As the monarchy continues changing, younger royals may become more important in maintaining the institution's future. While Eduardo himself may never become a central public figure, his support of Princess Beatrice could become increasingly significant. The role of a royal spouse has never been easy. It requires understanding when to step forward and when to step back. It requires patience, loyalty, and the ability to withstand criticism without constantly defending yourself. And perhaps that explains why Eduardo's story continues to fascinate people. He entered the royal world without demanding attention. He became famous without trying to become famous. And he built a public image based not on dramatic statements, but on quiet consistency. But even after years of public fascination, one mystery remains. What does the future truly hold for the man who went from a private businessman to one of the world's most recognized royal husbands? Will history remember Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi simply as Princess Beatrice's partner, someone who stood quietly beside her? Or will people eventually recognize that his influence, his choices, and his role within the family were far more significant than anyone realized at the beginning? Because behind every royal headline is a much more complicated human story. And in Eduardo's case, the biggest chapter may still be waiting to be written.